Come on, stop copying me. Mom, he's copying me again. Has that ever happened to you? Has anyone ever copied you in your personal or professional life? That's today's topic. Comparing and copying will destroy your real estate business. So let me ask you a question. Has anyone ever copied you in this business where you're so proud to create a piece of marketing and you're happy about it, you're proud of it, before you know it, somebody else has completely ripped you off? That's what today's video is all about. So when I'm talking about copying, when it comes to copying and comparing, the copying I'm talking about is marketing, not processes or things like, hey, they have a for sale sign, so I need one too. They have a front desk staff, so I need that too. That's not the copying I'm talking about. I'm talking about the message you put out into the public. You find your uniqueness about you, your strength, your superpower, you put it out there. Before you know it, somebody else is ripping off and duplicating your content. How do you feel about that? Has that ever happened to you? I know it has to me, and it really irked me. I was really, really ticked off. And I know this business is notorious for agents copying each other. And the way I like to say it is, it's the blind leading the blind, because sometimes you think somebody's got this amazing marketing concept, they put it out to the public, it appears that that's the marketing piece that works. So you're thinking, wow, if it worked for them, I'm going to rip it off, duplicate it, and use it as my own. And then what ends up happening is it's like a doggy pile effect. One agent starts something off that may not even work for them. Everyone else looks to that and they're all like, yeah, I'm going to use that too. And it's the blind leading the blind, because you could be trying to copy something that may in fact be completely useless and a waste of time. As I'm thinking about this video, maybe I should have made a second one about copying and then a different video about comparing, but I think really, truly, they do go hand in hand, because when you start comparing yourself to somebody that appears to be extremely successful, a lot of agents tend to try to copy that. That's why I paired the two in this video. Maybe in the future I'll separate them and do a completely separate video, but I don't think it's necessary, since for the most part, they do go hand in hand. There are pros and cons to both copying and comparing. Let's talk about comparing first. So what could the pros be of comparing? Well, if you're down here, whatever that level is, and somebody is up here, whatever that level is in terms of success, everyone defines it differently, but let's say you're doing 20 deals and somebody's doing 200 deals and you're comparing yourself. You see, you started over here at one point in time. Now you're over here doing 20 deals, but somebody's doing 200. And this is the portion that most of us, including myself, we tend to focus on the unhealthy aspect of it. That is the comparison gap. Instead of looking at, look how far I've come, I'm going to continue to put my head down and move forward, we tend to lift our head and go, what is everyone else doing? How are they doing that? Why are they so successful? Maybe I should do more of that. And you start comparing yourself and you focus on the comparison gap, which is extremely, extremely dangerous. So the pro of that is, if you can focus on how far you've come and not focus on the comparison gap, which is up here, that could be an extremely positive thing. This is kind of funny because I'm trying to separate pros and cons, but I think I pretty much covered the pro and con of both. Here's the line, here's the pro, here's the con. It's that simple. Oh yeah, I guess another pro that I completely forgot is, you know what is possible. If somebody's doing 200 deals or 500 or 1,000 deals or whatever amount of deals they do, at least you know what's possible if you do it in a mentally healthy way. Not focusing on the gap, but focusing on, look how far I've come, but I can also see what's possible for me. Put a smile on your face, feel good about it, and just put your head back down and continue plowing ahead. That's a good thing, I guess. Now let's look at copying. So what are the pros and cons? First, let's take a look at the pros. If you're copying somebody, literally taking their marketing material and you're copying them and using them as your own, I guess the pro is you can grow your business. Now the question really is, can you grow your business as quickly and as far as the person you're copying? That's the big question right there. We'll answer that very shortly. And I guess the other pro is you can somewhat learn what can grow your business potentially. Because if you're copying somebody, you can learn from them. And I know that Tony Robbins, he says, if you want to be successful, do what the successful people do. Now, I genuinely agree with that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about ripping off and duplicating what they do, not trying to see their marketing strategies, for example, maybe their lead follow-up systems, and then making it your own. I think that is a completely different thing because you can be inspired by somebody's marketing concept and apply that to your own. But I think literally copying or duplicating and making it your own is not so great. And yes, there are cons. The first one and the biggest one that I think is completely true is you just end up looking like a copycat. I mean, let's face it, a big team or whoever, what other agent is putting out a message into the market, and all of a sudden, here comes along another agent with the exact same message. Take a look at that situation from the public's point of view. If you're the second on scene and you're proud of this message you managed to duplicate or rip off, they're going to look at you as the copycat. It's plain and simple. It's not magic and not rocket science either. And the big thing is you will cap your business. Yes, you can grow your business somewhat, but your business will cap out well below the person you copied. Let's get right into that. Before I do, let me know please in the comments section below, do you agree with that? Do you agree that copying somebody, first of all, is okay? And do you think that you could be just as successful as the agent you copied? I'd love to know what you think. Comment section, let me share a few things with you. I've got a story about something that happened to me when it comes to copying content. And this story is about me literally copying and duplicating what a successful agent was doing because I was playing the whole comparing and copying game. I was fairly new in the business at this point in time, and I was doing geographical farming. And I would do it 3 different ways. There are 2 primary ways that I did it. Every single Saturday and Sunday, I spent at an open house in this specific community, and which was, I guess, okay. But I mean, I wasn't with my family, which really sucked. A lot of my time was sitting open houses. And the second one that I really didn't like was cold calling. I would pick a street in the neighborhood that I wanted to dominate, pick up the phone and start cold calling. And of course, 99% of the time plus, it's just rejection after rejection. But back then, that was okay because social media platforms weren't around. YouTube really wasn't around. So if you didn't have a huge budget for newspaper ads, that was really the only way most agents did it. So that's what I did. The third way that I dabbled in, I guess you can say dabbled because it really wasn't consistent, and that is doing the flyer drop. Because I would try a couple of times, it didn't work, then I'd give up, and then I'd look at another agent and try to copy what they're doing, incorporate that into my marketing, flyers, and then I would send that out a couple of times, it didn't work. It was just a disaster. I shouldn't have done it. I wasted so much money. I should have just went to Vegas for a weekend, blew that money, and actually had a better time. So let me get back to the story. I was a newish agent at that point in time. This agent came in. At that point in time, I was roughly in my mid-30s. He was roughly in his mid-60s. He had 40 years plus in his business, and he was brand new to our city, but he knew what he was doing. And he started plastering my neighborhood. Yeah, that's right. It was my neighborhood because, well, I lived there, but that's not what made it mine. It's because I decided I was going to dominate. And then this agent comes in and he decides he's going to dominate. Didn't go over well with me. I got to tell you that right up front. But he did it. He crushed me. I was like a little boom. I was a little speck to him. Within 6 months, 1 out of every 3, at least for sale signs, were his. But he hammered the neighborhood with flyers. It seemed like every week, I'm not kidding you, every week, it was at least 3 times a month where he would do a flyer drop. He would have these pamphlets, flyers, they were beautiful. He hired a marketing company that I didn't know existed in my town until I actually learned who he was using. Then I started using them, of course. He used them to do flyer drops, and it worked. Within 6 months, he blew up. Everybody knew his name. But I hated him. I wanted nothing to do with him. I didn't even want to speak to him because I don't want to get into it. Let's just say I didn't like him. Hindsight 2020, he was an awesome dude. He passed away a few years ago. And, I wish that I knew back then what I know now. I would have congratulated him. I would have given him a high five. I would have taken him out for dinner and say, hey, you know what? You deserve it because you're doing something that I was supposed to do and I just didn't know how. But back then I was furious. How dare he? I literally sank my own business because I had my head down. I was focused on doing my own thing. But then I started comparing myself to this guy and I felt like I was doing something wrong. So then I started copying him and it completely backfired. I had sleepless nights. I was angry. I was frustrated at him, but I was actually frustrated at myself, truthfully. So that's why I do believe that copying and comparing will kill your business. I know what you're thinking. Hey, dude, hold your horses. That happened to you doesn't mean it's going to happen to me. I'm way smarter than you. And I don't doubt that you're smarter than me. But that's just one of the stories that I have. Has this ever happened to anyone else or any other company? I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look at Apple versus BlackBerry. Back in the day before the iPhone came out, who was the big phone provider? It was the Crackberry, of course. I had one and so did everyone else. It was the best thing out there. Then what happened? Apple decided to come out with their brand new iPhone. It wasn't even a superior product, but it didn't matter. They were different than BlackBerry. Of course, hindsight is 2020, but BlackBerry back then was looking at Apple as the boom, the spec. They're like, oh no, this phone, are you kidding me? It's not going to last. Well, it did, and it eventually killed off the BlackBerry. About a year or two into the existence of the new iPhone, BlackBerry decided to look at them and say, these guys are not going away. In fact, they're gaining market share very quickly, and we are plummeting very quickly. What did they do? Well, two things. They started to compare and copy. Now, they were comparing themselves to the new iPhone, meaning the BlackBerry to the iPhone, thinking, man, what can we do? Hey, I have an idea. Why don't we copy what they were doing? They hired a bunch of coders, app makers, whatever you call them. They now started introducing their own apps into the marketplace, and they started making their phone look and act more like the iPhone. So let me ask you a question. Did it help or not? We all know what happened to the Crackberry. I don't even know if they make handsets anymore. They decided to leave that business and focus on something completely different. Yes, the company is still around, they still exist, but they are no longer in the mobile handset game. Why? Because they were looking to somebody else, they were comparing themselves, and then they started copying. And they were going down the right path in the beginning. They disrupted the marketplace, but instead of innovating, they lost sight. Somebody else came into the game. They did something different. They didn't try to compare themselves or copy what BlackBerry was doing. They were saying, we're going to go in a completely different direction. They completely disrupted the game, killing off the BlackBerry. It was a sad day. I loved that phone. Is that enough proof? Do you need more proof? Or should I tell you one more story? I'm glad you asked. I've got one more story for you. Does the name Uber mean anything to you? They completely disrupted the industry. And here's what happened. Uber, the people that started up Uber, they looked at the cab industry and they didn't say, hey, what are they doing? Let's do it better. They looked at the industry as a failing industry and they filled a gap in the industry that the industry didn't realize they wanted, and that is to get away from the traditional, let's wait an hour for a cab, then get into an old, broken down, stinky cab, and then guess what? Ooh, the credit card processor magically doesn't work, it's cash only. They filled that gap. They provided car service like that very quickly. You walked out of a store, you looked at your phone, you pressed a button, 5 minutes later, you were in a cab, and it was much more affordable. It's not because they were comparing themselves and then copying the taxi cab industry. No. Here's the one thing I want to make abundantly clear when it comes to the word disruption or disrupting. You should never go out to disrupt anything because it's perfectly okay to be a new person into an industry, and I'm talking about any business under the sun, and not actually disrupt what's happening there, but you also gain market share. If you happen to disrupt the industry, that's great. That should not be the focus. There is a term I want to address here in this video that I haven't yet, the phrase category king. And this is how I regrew my real estate business. I became a category king of being the digital mayor. I started doing real estate marketing that hasn't been done before. I became the digital mayor of my community, and I started publishing content. I started putting marketing material out there that was different, and that's how I got noticed. That's how I was able to triple my income within 9 months. And I've tried being better cold caller, better objection handler. I was trying to be better, forcing me to work a heck of a lot more, chasing and doing everything that all the other agents were doing. But you see, being better is not the name of the game. It's being different. If there's one thing I can tell you right now, I'm not better than most agents. I know that. But what I decided to do was just to be different. And that worked. So when I say the category king is if you are an agent that decides to, for example, niche down and chase a certain community, demographically, psychographically, there are many ways of doing that. But when you decide to do something different than what is being currently done in your marketplace, you set your own category. You're no longer chasing and doing what all the other real estate agents are doing. You are now setting up your own category. That's what I decided to do in the real estate game. So when I say category king, here's what I'm talking about. Let's take this back to the Uber idea. The taxi cab industry was disrupted because Uber didn't try to be better. They created their own separate category, and the category was, oh wow, it's late, 10:51 p.m. Where was I? They decided to put a little app on the phone and say, hey, press this button and you can get a ride wherever you wanted. So the traditional model was you pick up the phone and you waited for a stinky cab to show up. They decided to be different and do everything on a mobile device, which I know you're very familiar with. Here's the key. The first person or the first company, the first entrepreneur, the first real estate agent that decides to chase or do something completely different, there's a really good chance you could become the category king if you continue to innovate. So what happened with Uber? Well, they made a ton of money fairly quickly. I mean, it did take them a few years, even though it appeared that they were an overnight success, which they weren't. It actually took them a few years, but yes, they grew very quickly in comparison to other companies. So what happened? Other companies decided to chase and copy what Uber was doing. What is another name that comes to mind? Maybe Lyft. But I'm looking at some statistics online, and where are they? Light blue here is Uber. So in 2017, 74% market share. Lyft had 22% market share. And then other, I'm assuming other means all the other companies that decided to create a nifty app, that's 4%. October, look at Uber, 69%, Lyft, 29%, other, 2%. Then we've got 2018, Uber 69, Lyft 29, other almost 2%. August 2019, Uber 71%, gaining market share again, Lyft 27%, other almost 2%. So when you become the category king and somebody decides to rip you off and duplicate what you're doing, yes, they can grow their business. And that's why in the beginning of this video, near the beginning of this video, I said, yes, you can grow your business, but the question really is, can you be as successful as the first person, meaning the category king? No. History has shown time and time again that if you are the first person to do something and you do it well and you continue to market and innovate, you're going to get a huge percentage of the market. So in this case, Uber is hitting around 70%. And guess what? All the other companies are fighting for scraps. I decided to become the digital mayor. I was creating a lot of content. I was writing a lot of blog posts about the city, about the people that live in the city. I also recorded some videos, and that's how I was able to gain traction very quickly. Like I said, tripled my business in 9 months. So did I get noticed? Absolutely. What did the other agents decide to do? They decide to copy and rip me off. They were doing the same type of marketing. Excuse me, my voice is a little scratchy tonight. It's almost midnight. Actually, yeah, it's almost midnight. This is what happens is you get the biggest chunk of the money, then there's a distant second, everyone else fights for scraps. So people were trying to also be the digital mayor of my community. It didn't work. They eventually faded out. There is a real estate team in my city right now. They came in. They became extremely successful within the first couple of years. They've got a mega team right now. And the way they decided to create their own category was back in the day where HGTV just started doing shows on like Love It or List It. This is going back before 2010, some around there, give or take, where staging wasn't a thing back then. But now we all know that staging is a huge part of what we do, what you guys do as real estate agents. Well, back then, they were the first ones on scene to say, we're going to stage your home and we're going to make you more money. That's how they gained traction. But then other agents started copying their marketing. It just didn't work because they looked like the copycats. Okay, so that was kind of a long-winded video. I think I should stop. Conclusion. So here's the conclusion. I don't believe copying and comparing yourself to somebody else is positive. Yes, there are positive aspects of it if you do it correctly, but overall, I think it really can kill your business because if you look at your own marketing from the public's point of view, you're going to very quickly see that you're just blending into the white noise. I want to know what you think. I would love to hear your comments. Please put them down below. And I feel like there's something I'm forgetting. I think there's that and there's that. So have an awesome day. Take care.